Yeah, she's calling back. We're going to try to give her a call again, and then she just added another phone number to the 13-year-old grandson who's possibly with the daughter. Step out with this.
2412.
Veteran crisis hotline's calling in, so they have a female veteran off her medication. She's over at the safe haven. Detective 12, we'll check that one out.
6 Rumble, 2 1 started to shot.
Officer still stands for time? No. Offender in custody? Thanks. Anyone else close by this result, let me know. First number. 10-4. Officer still stands for time? No. Offender in custody? Thanks. Anyone else close by this result, let me know. 10-5, sir.
33. Can you let a supervisor know that I have a case for the test?
1830.
Yes, Boston, Sheridan, and Wilson.
The first number. 10-4. Miss where, Stella? 47-4. I'm sorry, wait a minute. Okay, try that one more time for me. 847 Fulton. 847 Fulton, okay. 4230 front of the doors with domestic battery. 1815 North Winchester, 18.5 North Winchester. And he stated the caller is the owner of the vehicle. Thank you. 111-117, we're 11.
Good evening, and thank you all for joining. Thank you, Yolie, for hopping up.
No problem.
And I apologize. I'm still kind of, I haven't been feeling good again. I don't know, ever since this ice storm, I just can't shake whatever bug. I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah,
it's like
my dry eyes are bad.
I feel good for a couple days, and then all of a sudden, boom, I wake up and I'm like, man, I'm cloudy again, my sinuses, energy and all that. So I'm trying to push through, but thank you all for hopping in. Appreciate you very much. We're going to be going through the rest of our IGG suppression hearings from last week. And also there was a document that just dropped shortly before the show. That it drives me nuts because I don't know how many times I've set a title for Idaho 4 and then in the middle of it I gotta change it and add a new thumbnail because a document dropped or something. It's like it always drops between like 4 and 7 Central sometime. I don't know.
Yeah, but I saw that document.
What'd you think?
Well, it goes to see the Idaho Rule of Evidence. That's what the IRE is. It says Notice of Intent to Use Idaho Rule of Evidence 404B. And I can share this if you want, the rule, so that you can see what it is that they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can do this. All right. Am I sharing?
Okay, I will now. There we go.
Okay. So this is the Idaho Rules of Evidence 404. It's character evidence, crimes, and other acts. So they're going with 404B. And 404B is crimes, wrongs, and other acts. So the first one they're not using, but it's the second one, number 2. It says crimes, wrongs, or other acts. Permitted uses. So they can use crimes, wrongs, or other acts if in a criminal case. It says if notice in a criminal case, you have to give notice like they did. And it says this evidence may be admissible for another purpose, such as proving motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, absence of mistake, or lack of accident. In a criminal case, the prosecutor must file and serve reasonable notice of the general nature of any such evidence that the prosecutor intends to offer at trial, and do so reasonably in advance of trial, or during trial if the court for good cause is shown excuses, lack, or pre-trial notice. So they're using it probably to show preparation and plan, but I forget what the document says. So let me stop sharing this.
So we'll switch back to that. Okay. And here, let me shrink it down a little bit.
Let me see if I can read that. You want to read it?
Just go ahead and click full screen on the StreamYard. So hover over the StreamYard screen.
Oh, okay. I didn't know I could do that.
And then you can click full screen. Yeah, that's what I had to do to read that one that you were sharing.
Okay. Okay, so It says, comes now the state of Idaho by and through Ashley S. Jennings, Latah County Senior Deputy Prosecutor, and hereby gives notice pursuant to Idaho Rule of Evidence 404B2. The state of Idaho intends to present evidence of crimes, wrongs, or other acts, specifically video of traffic stop occurring at West Pullman Road / Farm Road in Moscow, Idaho on August 21st, 2022, involving Brian Koberger and Latah County Sheriff's Office Corporal Darren Duke. And then the next page.
West Pullman. Hold on. West Pullman Road. Farm Road. I'm gonna video of a traffic stop. That's the traffic stop, yeah, in August that they didn't release.
Oh, they didn't release it, no.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
And it says citation and then the number issued regarding same traffic stop. And then they talk about the number that it is in discovery. And it says, the state intends to introduce this evidence for the purpose of proving defendant's identity, vehicle, address, and phone number. Okay. This issue has previously addressed by the court in the December 15, 2023 sealed order denying motion to dismiss indictment on the grounds of biased grand jury, inadmissible evidence, lack of sufficient evidence, and prosecutorial misconduct. It says see page 43, but there is no 43 attached.
Right. It just
It's just the certificate of delivery, the service.
So
they're not using it. So they're not using it for plan. I thought they would be using it for plan preparation.
Right.
They're using it for identity. I don't understand. I really
don't either.
I don't.
So why would it be sealed? Do you know what I'm saying? If they're using it for identity, well, then why is it still sealed? Like if it's part of the crime, you don't put it out. If it's part of the act.
Yeah. I immediately thought it was for preparation, like he was scoping the area.
Right.
And but no, it's for identity, knowledge. What is it again? Identity. Go down.
Let's see here.
Identity, vehicle, address, and phone number. Okay.
Yes. So why seal? Why is it sealed?
I mean, it could be redacted, the phone number and the address. But
yeah. I mean, like any FOIA,
Doesn't make any sense.
It would. You should be able to get it with a FOIA. If that's all it's for.
It was. I know at least one person tried to get it, and they said it was not available because it would prejudice a fair trial.
That was Andrew, right?
No, actually, this was Jules True Crime Reactions.
Okay.
Andrew tried to get something else, and it was denied.
Yeah, we've had her on this show a few times. She's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, why is it sealed? What's up, everybody? Thank you for hopping in. Please hit the like if you haven't yet. Corporal Darren Duke. West Pullman Road, Farm Road. Yeah. A video of a traffic stop. I mean, we've seen the other ones. Remember the other ones? It was when mainstream media had the one traffic stop. It was like, oh my gosh, look at how he's looking at her. And this was when he was supposedly getting kicked out of bars and treating women like crap. And, they were calling him an incel back then and all sorts of stuff. And so,
yeah, what I saw was him just trying to get out of a ticket.
I mean, what I saw, because I was out in Pennsylvania driving those roads where he went to school at DeSale. I went out there and we went out to the campus and I showed everybody. We went out in the area that he was from and drove around all of those roads and stuff while we were doing stuff after Cavalcante on the way back. We went there and even did some lives from there. I think we did one from DeSale. But yeah, when I'm going through those roads And then I also drove in Moscow and Pullman, and they are completely, I mean, it's like night and day when it comes to the roads, how they're structured, when it comes to like what's legal and what's not with stop signs. And I mean, it is a different world on the road, especially in Pennsylvania. It's a lot different. And so what I saw with that body cam that got released was him literally just being confused of, you know, what the laws were at that time. Remember, he didn't have Washington state plates. You know, he still had his Pennsylvania. And I could see, you know, I could see somebody moving from Pennsylvania, being used to those roads your whole life, and then you move out to Pullman and it's completely different roads, and who knows, maybe you were nervous to even take the driving test to get your license and your plates caught up, you know, and you didn't have to do it until your birthday. uh and I could see him just, I don't know about even trying to get out of a ticket, but maybe just trying to be like, okay, I'm sorry, like I'm still learning these roads, is because he did ask her some questions too, you know, and did let her know it's like completely different roads out there. So
It didn't seem, I mean, he didn't seem, he just seemed like he was trying to say, like, trying to not get ticketed. Like, you know,
yeah,
say the roads, you know.
it's an honest
Every
mistake.
time I saw, the only times I've ever seen him speak is when there's a police officer talking to him.
But he's not like, I mean, you look at him, you know, it who's not nervous when you get pulled
Yeah.
over? You know what I'm saying? And when some people are nervous, you know, they just have that stare. And I never saw any kind of demeaning words or vocal energy when there's interactions. It's simply just, okay, you know, I apologize, and you know, whatever. To me, it's just normal traffic stops. Even when he was pulled over in Indiana those couple times on his way back to Pennsylvania, you know, you got to think about it. You're driving, and trust me, when you're driving tons of hours, you know, you're freaking tired. And
Yeah.
they were already driving for how many hours already? They went from Washington State, took a detour because of the weather, and we're in Indiana. You know, you're talking maybe another 10 hours to Pennsylvania, somewhere around there. You know, I didn't even see anything that was out of the ordinary. I mean, it's crazy that you get pulled over twice for the same thing. Um, you know, but I'm gonna be honest with you. I was pulled over one time because I was following a semi too close, and it was because the semi in front of me decided to slam on its brakes for a second, because he saw the officers parked in the little median at nighttime, and then they pulled me over because I was following too close because I didn't want to slam on my brakes too. And you know, that's simply what I told them. They're like, well, you know, okay, man, appreciate it. Here's a warning. You know, it's true though. Like, and who knows? You know, it is weird though. 2 times in 10 minutes.
Right. It is strange. I don't know. And he didn't flee, so
No.
there wasn't a high-speed chase, like, you know.
Yeah, wouldn't that be crazy though? But really, remember, that was December 15th. You know, Fry
Oh,
was still telling the public on December 16th and 17th they're still looking for a 2011 to 2013 Elantra. If they already knew his identity according to this document, right? If they already knew his identity in August, well, then why didn't they come out with the 2015 exact year
yeah,
model if they already knew
right.
him,
If they already knew. Correct.
right?
That's a good point.
And why would Fry be coming out to the public on local news telling people they're still looking for a 2011 to 2013 after Koberger already made it back to Pennsylvania?
That's correct. So I don't know why they are wanting to use that traffic stop and why it's not available to the public, but it just sounds weird to me. I don't get it. I thought they were going to be using it for plan or preparation, like he was scouting out the area, to try to say, but that's not what they're using it for. They can't. But maybe they are just using it for some stupid reason, just so that the jury could get it into their mind that, oh, he was planning.
Well, it's like Ann Taylor said in the court hearings. She said they're trying to, remember when she said that they're trying to use certain data to show that he was stalking and doing all these things, and it's misleading the courts.
Yeah.
And that's what Ann Taylor was saying, and I think this is one of them, right?
Yeah, there's still people talking about Brian Koberger stalking the victims.
So if you knew his identity in August, then why was it put out as a 2011 to 2000? Why first was it put out as a Nissan? Then what? Right? Then why was it put out as a 2011 to 2013 Elantra? You can read the article. I did a video way back then about it being a Nissan. Shout out to Michi Girl. It was a Nissan first.
Yeah.
Why wasn't it a 2015 Hyundai Elantra as soon as they were, quote, on to Koberger? Because there's a lot of people talking still to this day how they were on to Koberger in November and those traffic stops were related. And I've been telling people this whole time, then why would Fry on December 16th and 17th tell the public it was still a 2011 to 2013? People wanted to make fun of it, but really it's the truth, and this shows it even more.
Yeah, I think it might come back to bite them in the butt if they say they're using it for identity, for his identity and vehicle. Yeah. I'm just very confused with some of the things that are happening in this case.
Well,
and I don't know if you saw the other document. It was unsealing the protective order that involved Brian Koberger's medical records and his family's medical records.
I can pull it up. Hold on one second. Let me
That
go
was
to
odd.
Oh, you got to scroll for days when it comes to Koberger's case. Sometimes you over scroll. All right, hold on one second. Let me share it again. What's up, Sea-Dog? Good to see you, buddy. Here, let me actually, you know what? Let me
I have to make this bigger.
Let me move us up here. And let me move this.
My eyes are so bad.
Let me move this down there. That should look better.
These are better.
All right, so let me see here.
Order, yeah, that one.
This one right here. All right, so, all right, there we go.
So this is the order unsealing stipulated motion for sealed protective order and the sealed protective order. Order unsealing stipulated motion for sealed protective order.
Say it 5 times real fast.
This is the sealed protective order. It says, you want me to read it?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Previously, the court sealed the following filings in this case at the request of the parties. So both parties requested it. Stipulated motion for sealed protective order filed January 13th, 2025, and sealed protective order filed January 15th, 2025. After reviewing the matter with the parties, the court could find no compelling basis to maintain these documents as sealed filings. Therefore, it is ordered, and this does order that the two filings referenced herein shall be unsealed by the clerk of the court. The court's prior January 13th, 2025 order sealing the documents is hereby vacated. Does it attach what it is? No.
Nope.
Apparently, what it was is evidence for the mitigation phase of the trial, meaning it was evidence regarding the medical records or mental health records of Brian Koberger and his family, but it didn't give information as to what the medical records say, but it did describe him something like that. I don't know who covered it, but I heard that. And so apparently it's on the docket, but you don't have to go looking for it. I don't know. It's weird that
I have a feeling all this stuff's going to be unsealed, really. Because look at what they've had sealed this whole time, and we just brought it up in the beginning. That's ridiculous. For what?
I don't know. They have this administrative rule that allows them to seal under certain circumstances, but I don't know. I did see your show where you had that guy at the end of the show, the drop the mic guy, that was talking about how he's surprised that the media hasn't sued because it should be open, and how the families have a right. The families of the victims have a right to be in court. And here we're having these behind the door meetings and hearings, and it's very strange. Like I told you, it was strange that, he had a closed hearing and then had them argue the evidence in an open hearing.
I have a feeling. This is why I wanted it to move to Boise from the beginning.
Yeah.
Is even when the house was still up, I was still pleading for it to move to Boise because I knew this is what would take place. I knew because you weren't going to get this in Moscow. Judge wasn't going to unseal nothing. Okay. And because, the good old boy, pat your back up there. Down in Boise, it's more up to date. And that's where I felt like somebody would have a fair trial. And it doesn't even matter that it's Brian Koberger. It could be Jeffrey Hamburger. And that I would still talk and discuss it the way I do, because to me, when you look at how everything's been done, you look at the investigation first before it even got to a trial or court hearings or anything. And it was already hush hush. It was already trust us, we got a ton. It was already, the leaks about the visual snow and the leaks about the questionnaire that he made up at DeSale University, about SKs and stuff, and all this stuff was getting leaked, and it was a public agenda push. And it was so obvious when you just kind of like look at it at a deeper level and really look at it and be like, they wouldn't have to do this stuff if this was really true. And it's one of the reasons why even after he was arrested, it was still kind of one of those things, because we questioned the investigation before there was even an arrest, and then after the arrest and you take a step back after the shock, because that's what it is. It's shock and awe to bring down your awareness. And after the dust settled a little bit, then, a week after, we're like, I'm sitting there looking at the PCA Exhibit A from Brett Payne after the first week, and I'm going, this don't make sense, people.
Well, apparently there's more to the PCA that's sealed.
Yeah.
An attachment.
Yeah, let's see that.
That's what Andrew Myers tried to get, and they told him no. But maybe if we had all the information, we might think differently. I don't know, but there's just not enough to know whether he did it or not.
Well, this is the biggest question, though, regardless of anything, because what I've always wondered, regardless of the contaminated crime scene, how long it took Ellie to show up, how Mabit even says I wasn't alive, I didn't get. I went about 5:30. You know, after she was allowed to go there. I'm sorry, she should have been one of the first people to show up, along with the first officer, because that's how it's typically done. And and everything from the beginning, it was kind of, it was, yes, it was very shoddy, but uh w- when it came to the whole DNA, the IGG, the skin cells on the button snap, how did that get there? And that's my biggest question, because everything else, when we're looking at it, yeah, we don't, there's a lot of stuff that's not sealed, but you look at the stuff that's not, that's not going to be sealed, and you're like, well, there's no reason for that to be sealed. So you can only imagine that there's other stuff just like that.
I mean,
But
so far,
how did
so
the
far,
IGG get there though,
that's going to be a question. How did
The
the touch or the
the biggest one.
trace DNA get on the knife sheath, on the
Yeah.
button snap of the knife sheath? So that would be the question. But what's coming out seems to me like it's more favorable to Brian Koberger, like the witness statement, she wasn't reliable,
The different height. She's 5'10". She would have been able to say if somebody was, just because remember, according to Brett Payne, tall, same height or a little taller. But according to that one, 5'8", that's a completely different height. And when you're taller than 5'8", you would know that you're taller than that individual.
Yeah. And, the DNA stuff is kind of hard to understand, even for this judge, I think. They're not, that's why he said when they disclose their experts, he wants like a mini course on DNA, when they
Oh,
set
yeah.
it up or whatever.
You have to, and it's important too, because before we were getting into all those different shows about IGG and how the process works and all the homework that you need to refer back to be able to get to your conclusion, and how the people that are proficient in that profession even explain to you that it's not even a science. You can't get a degree. There's no credentials that you can get for it. It's basically an art. And all the way back then, I mean, hell, when we first heard DNA and skin cells and all that, it was like thinking back to OJ, slam dunk. But then when you start to hear these experts and the people that are proficient in this, and them sitting there explaining to you, whether it's on podcasts or whether it's on the court hearings that they had in the beginning, you learn a lot about the process. And
Yeah, there's a lot of steps, remember? We went
right.
through it, and at one point I knew it. It's an investigative tool. At one point we went through all of that. I can't remember now, but there's a lot of steps.
I mean, a lot. And they even said themselves, this is not a tool that's used to convict somebody. This is a tool that's used to exonerate people, um, with those projects that they have there. But like I said, they had a week before the next semester started. You already heard the students after Koberger was arrested. There was interviews with the students that came back, and they were telling you themselves only about 50% of the students came back. That was
Yeah.
it.
And I just so I make sure I'm correct, that we haven't seen anything that he bought a K-bar knife, right? There's this Amazon thing, but we don't know what
There's like
became of it.
4 different Blue Ridge, Amazon. I can't remember them. It's been so long. There's like 4 different ones. But some he got, I think he got them online too. He did with Blue Ridge, obviously Amazon. I'd have to go back. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, but I don't think that anything came up, right? I don't actually, don't quote me on that because it may be sealed, but
Well, I never even seen them say they found one either, or, anything that had to do with any of that. Um, Yeah, I don't think, because see, this is the problem, because you're going back to all the way back then, and you're trying to remember the documents, and then you're trying to like squeeze out the misinformation that was being pumped by mainstream media, because that was all up in your head back then too.
Yeah, I don't want to misspeak, but it's been
Right.
such a long case that it's some of the stuff you forget, and then you think you remember, and it may not be right.
Yeah. Do you remember Michi Girl? Because I know there wasn't any other connections.
Yeah, she was
Uh,
following it very well, like really.
yeah. Yeah. From the very beginning too. Um, yeah, she's one of the OGs. Uh, but yeah, when it comes to that, I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be unsealed, and I think it's going to be for a good reason, because uh, I think people are going to see exactly what they've been trying to, in my opinion, they've been trying to hide for a long time. Think about what, the Ellen Greenberg case that we just discussed. When I did that show a couple days ago, we're going to do another one coming up. When we did that show a couple days ago, and I said, all you guys have to do is see the photos of the injuries, and you can already tell it's not a self-unaliving, but it was as a self-unaliving for 14 freaking years before it's finally starting to get reversed, because the medical examiner was manipulating his ruling based off of pressure from law enforcement. This stuff exists.
Yeah. And the DNA gets manipulated when they're doing an IGG, when they're have a sample and they put it in to a database. They have they have to first convert it to a STR sample and then a SNP, SNP. And then they have to keep doing that until it's amplified enough to put it in the database. And I'm not an expert. That's just what I remember,
Well,
basically.
you know what? We're gonna do a show. What'd you say, Monday night?
Yeah.
Let's. There's a lot of people that are new to this, and why don't we watch that CC Moore episode
Yeah,
again, and
that'll be good.
let everybody kind of understand, and we can kind of have a refresher on it. Um, because it's very important for people to a lot of people be like, oh shoot, it's slam, but when you're listening to it, it's like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
and then you take that, and what's up, Silky, and you mix it with uh the way the investigation has gone down from the start. I mean, when you look at the photos, okay, you see the photos of all the students, and they're in little groups and stuff. You see maybe what, 20 people out there max? Not very much, right? So this is what's crazy to me. You have a 911 call placed at 11:58. Law enforcement doesn't show up until 4 o'clock. Lanier's the first one to get there. As he's pulling up, he contacts Idaho State Police because he realizes before he gets out of the car that they're not going to be able to handle the situation. What are you what is the message here? From the beginning is, number one, you weren't prepared. So how long did you wait for ISP to get there before you even fucking walked up to the door? Number two, where's this humongous crowd of people where your Moscow police department couldn't handle putting students in groups of 10 and interviewing them one by one at a time in different parts of the area, just to try and get an idea of what took place? Did you hear something? Obviously they didn't drive over there, most of them. They probably walked, and they're probably from the neighborhood. So how come you couldn't handle that, and you knew you couldn't handle it when you look at the photos and there's not very many students out there? That's already a shoddy investigation as far as I'm concerned, and that was in the first couple hours of when they showed
Right.
up.
Yeah, I don't know what information he had to be able to determine that they weren't going to be able to handle it, but I'm sure just by looking at the students, or maybe one of the students said something about it. I don't know. But yeah, when these small towns, like they're so I mean, they're not, so they don't have sophisticated crimes, or they don't have these types of crimes. You know, like I know a trauma surgeon that, like, he couldn't go to a small town because there's hardly any traumas, you know. So he went to South Africa to get the training there because there's a lot of violence. But you know, in small towns, they're usually, especially in Idaho, they're usually reported as accidental if they're OD'd.
Or
They have a
unconscious,
lot of OD.
or unconscious
Yeah,
person.
right.
Yeah, we discovered that too because we looked it up while we were going through and discovering that Sigma Chi students were the EMS that were the first on the scene that day. That's when we started to discover that also if you call in a person for an OD, it also is labeled as unconscious person, and that person has complete immunity over what's found inside that property.
Yep.
And so does the person that the 911 call was for. So, well, as far as we know, Lanier said himself in his own words as soon as I pulled up.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just unacceptable, even if you're a small town. That's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
You know, you got your second in command saying that we can't handle this.
Well,
That
you know,
how can you trust that police force to handle any of these SAs? Because there's a lot of them up there,
yeah.
especially with teachers too.
Oh
How do
God.
you, how do you expect them to handle those? It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It's sad. And Rosenthal says, yeah, if you want to rank up quick, you just come to Moscow. It's
Yeah.
easy.
It's mass confusion with all these agencies involved.
You know, if you can't do the job, then don't sign up for it. You know, that's why it's somebody that wants to put pickles on the bottom of a burger. Don't sign up for the job if you don't know where to put the damn pickles, man.
You know, Silky brings up the Delphi case. I never got into that case, but I hear that it was a lot of
Oh yeah, we're gonna be getting into some Delphi here soon. I got some shows
yeah, I
coming up.
didn't get into it, so I mean,
Especially with this Ron Logan stuff coming out. Like I covered Delphi, so when I started my show, you know, it was a week before Idaho 4 happened, the crime took place. And I talked a little Delphi in the beginning too. And I have a lot of opinions about who's who in the drawings, who was involved. And it's kind of crazy that some of this stuff with Logan is coming out now. And I was like, yeah, I think it's time to do some Delphi shows, especially. I don't even know if any. I got some footage where I did the whole path and the walk and kind of showed you. You know, I'm going to include that too, kind of showing everybody the path and how they came in and where the person was probably sitting and stalking them out and all these different things. Yeah, it's pretty messed up. I mean, you see it a lot, and that's what I'm saying. That's what why I bring up this Ellen Greenberg case, because this is something that this is 14 years that Ellen's family has had to sit there and LE be, you know, saying it's, you know, and the medical examiner saying it's self-unaliving when it's obvious. You just take a look at the photos and you're like, there's no way in hell. This is not justice, and it's BS that this stuff takes place in all of these different cases. It's horrible.
well, you know, there's a jury instruction that for the criminal cases that, you know, you have to believe, you know, you have to come in with the thought that this defendant is innocent until proven guilty by the prosecution. So that's an instruction, and you have to promise to follow it. But there is no instruction that says you have to presume the police did everything right. You have to assume that the police did everything right and they're fine unless we show you they did something wrong. It's not like that. So we can second guess the police all we want, We can also second guess the defendant, but really, when you go to court and the jury is there, if you can't promise to presume he's innocent until proven guilty by the prosecution, then they kick you off. You know, you're not going to win that jury.
And I assume the pickle's going to be on the top of the burger until I take a bite and I notice that there's a pickle on the bottom, and then that's when we got to talk about it. And listen, everybody knows I shout out Ellie. We couldn't have the safety that we have without him, but unfortunately, we have to discuss the Ellie that aren't up for the job because it's about justice and truth for these victims, and the ones that aren't getting it, we need to speak about it. And so, if anybody knew any of us in the background, they would see how much we support our Ellie, our local, all of the Ellies out there. But you got to bring attention to the BS when it comes to that, because it's not right. It wasn't right for Ellen Greenberg's family to have to spend $700,000 of their own money in order for the city to change it to a homicide.
And we're talking about professionals here. Medical examiners are doctors. When they rule, when they make their findings, they're doctors. They're not just random. They have an ethical obligation to make sure they state the cause of death and manner of death according to the standard that they have. It's like Stephen Smith, that one medical examiner. Oh.
Yep. Same thing. It's the same thing. I even brought it up, with when I did that show, I brought up Stephen Smith. Look at the medical examiner. It can happen, people. This is true. I compared it to Micah Miller. Look at how, who should have been the main suspect in the beginning. They obviously didn't do an investigation. Hell, you got the dude that he was saying was his witness, the bellman, telling him to use his shoulder, and how the bellman walked up there with him. And then the bellman sits down there with Brian Enton 14 years later, and surprised, he didn't even know that's what the dude, he's using me as an excuse.
Yeah.
14 years later, and you're telling me law enforcement didn't double check with his quote witness about him going upstairs to bust in the room? It's not right. It's not right. It's not. How can this happen? How can this happen? When it's that in front of your face, how can this happen?
That's sad about Ellen Greenberg's family having to spend all that money.
$700,000 of their own money. And finally, 14 years later, the next episode we're going to do is going to be where her parents sat down with an interview a week or two ago before the court hearing. So it's a very, and like I always tell people, think about that family that's going through the same thing in the middle of nowhere, and they don't have any attention and any support, and they have to sit there and maybe they're fighting, but look right here, 700,000, 14 years. How many families have 700,000 in 14 years to try and have something?
Sad. That's very, very sad. And it's about, we shouldn't have to be policing the police.
Right.
We shouldn't have to be we're not medical doctors. We shouldn't have to be looking at the obvious and telling the medical examiner, well, look, how do you explain this? I saw a picture of it where there was stab wounds all over her. Yeah.
10 in the back of the head and the neck. And one of them punctured her skull. Like, how? And then the front? Like,
it's terrible. I know. I just saw that picture. It was like a diagram of her injuries. I don't know much about the case, but I just saw the diagram of her injuries, and it said that it was suicide. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's why I did that episode a couple days ago. It's the introductory episode to the case. So if anybody's not familiar, just go to my live from a couple days ago, Ellen Greenberg. I not only include it was the breaking news, how it's getting switched over to a homicide now, but also we kind of went through all the different facts and different parts of the general part of it. So that way, when we get into these other episodes, it's kind of like a, just like I said, an introduction to the case, and you can watch that to kind of get caught up real quick on everything that we're going to discuss. Yeah, and for 14, it's just like I said, you come across the pictures, you don't even have to know anything about the case. If you just
Right.
hear cell phone alive and you see those photos, you're like, no.
It's common. It's like it's a common person can see that. So why does the medical examiner, who's a professional, who is a doctor, who went to school, lots of schooling, why are we seeing the obvious and the medical examiner is taking a different approach and a different opinion when the obvious is there? It's like, I don't understand.
I don't either. It makes absolutely no sense. And, like it's a hard show to watch, though. Seriously, guys, these injuries ain't no joke. Okay. It's not, you know, it's a graphic episode. That's why there's a trigger warning on the thumbnail, because it is graphic. But we're going to go into a lot more. Like I said, we're going to get into the backgrounds of certain investigators involved, and things like that. When we come up to the future, Rosie's going to be joining us for some shows, getting into it as well. So we got a lot of stuff to discuss on it. But this court hearing,
Yeah, Rosie's in forensics, so that's a good one for her to talk about.
let me see here. How come it's not? Oh, hold on. There we go. So here's this court hearing. And let me adjust us a little bit. We're kind of weird.
I know, I'm like,
right? We're kind of like, I don't know why it does that. It makes it, I wish it would just shrink us, but there we go. Thank you all for hopping in. Appreciate you very much. If you're just joining, definitely check out the discussion we had about the document that just dropped a little bit before the show. It doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's going to be a very interesting trial. But really, like, how did his IGG get on the sheet? There's now supposedly skin cells can only last so long on brass. To me, the only thing I could think of, I would think that your DNA would be on more than the button snap. I don't know. I would just assume.
Yeah, I don't know. We just have to see. I mean, but yeah, DNA is a complicated thing. And once jurors hear DNA, sometimes they think, oh, they made up their mind.
Well, I mean, it's easy to do. It's like I was telling people, like, we've watched probably, I don't know, 8 total hours of IGG testimonies and interviews and stuff like that. And there's a lot to it, and you can't expect the jury, maybe the judge, and I hope the judge takes the time, because it's different. It is different than the liquid. But you can't expect jury members to take that time to kind of understand what it is. So it's pretty confusing. But I think, like, what we saw when the court hearing, where the audio was horrible, when they had the DNA experts coming in with the three individuals. One of them was Vargas. The audio was horrible. It's so hard to hear what they were saying, but when they're talking about it, I think that stuff alone will help the jury understand without having to really get caught up, because they're not allowed to do that, right? They're not allowed, while they're in trial and they know that they're going to be part of the jury, they're not allowed to look up
No.
other information. They're not allowed to at all. So really, it's going to depend on the testimonies of the experts. And I think it'll be pretty understood at that point. So they're going to be calling up Mowie now. In the last episode, that was Brett Payne. And at least Mowie can answer a few more questions than Payne. And also, the prosecution does have some questions for Mowie after Ann Taylor. What do you think the difference was, Yolie, between them not asking Brett Payne anything and them asking Mowie a few questions at the end? What do you think was the difference for that before we get into this?
I don't know. Probably because they just want to keep Brett Payne really tight. In other words, if they question him, then the other side might get to question him again, and they just want to keep him,
sealed up.
They want
to
say
keep his mouth sealed
possible, up. That's what I think. I don't know if that's the reason, but if I were not questioning somebody that was on my side, for example, technically Brett Payne is a witness for the prosecution. So if the defense brings them and questions them, and I'm the prosecution, and then I don't question them, it's because I want to cut it off. I don't want to open the door to anything.
Right. You don't want to ask a simple question and then it turn into a humongous mountain.
Yeah, because each side has their own brain and their own strategy, and if you think and you ask a question, well, the other side might have something up their sleeve and say, they opened the door. And you don't know. I mean, I don't know all the details because they're sealed, but they probably just want to keep him just quiet. They don't want to open the door for anything.
Yeah. Yeah. It almost seems like Mowie knew more than Payne did. And I was kind of shocked.
Yeah. He made a better witness in this hearing. I think in the last hearing for the motions to compel, those were bad, both Brett and Mowie. Remember those hearings where they were to compel?
Yeah, those were that was around the same time where they had like the video how Bill Thompson was arguing how the questionnaire could lead to people finding out information about evidence and stuff that they weren't allowed to see, and then they ended up playing Bill Thompson's own part of the press conference when they arrested Koberger, telling everybody that to go share the PCA. Go share it with your peoples and all this other stuff. Yeah, it was like,
it's embarrassing. A video of a suspect video, and they have Lewiston as the wrong city in the wrong state, and they have him driving out of the crime scene while the crime's occurring. They have this crazy map that looks like black. Just I don't know.
Yeah, I could listen. I didn't when I was doing my PCA route turn for turn out there. When I went out there, I looked at that map for so long, and I even sat there and I was like, because I would pick out like certain parts of each street so I could have this huge map, and I kept trying to make that exact map that they had, and I never could. I was like, there's no way in hell, because that part of the PCA route, that's why I didn't do that part of the PCA route, because I'm like, these roads make no sense on the bottom part of their map. And I'm like, screw that, because it already took me long enough to do the turn by turn for the route from Steptoe to 1122. That already took long enough because of the crap uh, information that was put in that Exhibit A from Brett Payne. The wrong city and states and the different parts of the street. Some wasn't an avenue, like different
It was
things.
laughable. We made fun of it because it was funny. It literally said a video. We saw a video of a suspect video.
Yeah. The white car that was taken from the cell phone at a gas station off of a old 80. Yeah, the
It
old
had
8
fingerprints.
the
of-
old 80s monitor, how people were even saying like the car was floating and stuff. You see that's a car that just has discs. There's no wheels on it. And it's like, oh my lord.
You
It's
see
like, oh my lord. Do
the
you
two
remember that?
circles? Do you see the two circles of the phone? The
Yeah,
reflection.
it's because it's just like with Sebastian Rogers' Lights video. When you're taking a cell phone video of a monitor, y'all take a photo from your cell phone camera of your TV screen or your monitor and see the difference in the clarity. Okay, like seriously,
Yeah, what
it
I
would.
didn't understand was the suspect video. What was suspect about the video?
That was the car that was speeding away.
But they don't say why it was suspect.
Remember, because he supposedly was going down. What was that road? I'd have to look up the
You know
map.
what? Do you have a picture of that car? Just because some people may not have seen it, like Pam or
Somewhere. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Hey Angels, did any of you have the photo of the white car from the gas station? I can pull up. I'll show you where
I'm sure Pam would like to see it.
I mean, oh my gosh. I could look for it in a second.
Well, can we play this and then you can look, or however.
Yeah, hold on.
They need grammar classes. Yeah.
It's okay. What's that street? Because it was on Troy Road. Remember Steiner? Remember he was going down Steiner. So here, let me switch this. Remember he was going down Steiner. He's going down Steiner, and then he turned right on Troy. And then after he turned right on Troy, that's when he was kind of going up in this neighborhood somewhere. Then after that is when he supposedly hit 95 and went south. Okay. So this is where's Steiner at again? Right here, Steiner. So you go to Steiner and Highway 8. This is the gas station. Okay, so I'm going to put you where the car would have had to been. Okay, so this is what. So a lot of people think that the car is on the other side, and it's not, because when you're looking at the background, it looks like there's snow and all this other stuff. Well, there wasn't snow there. What you're seeing in the background of the photo is actually this part of the street. Okay, so
Right.
this car had a photo taken of it when it was driving down this part of the road. That's why you see a little white in the back and you see this darkness up here. The camera that took the photo, you see where it's at? Right there, right above where the exit of the car wash is. That's the camera that took the photo of the car right here. Now, let me see. Hold on. It's probably in. Let me look in this folder real quick. If it's not in this folder, then I'll really have to dig, because I have so much stuff on Idaho, and it's all over the place. Let me see here. Yes, here it is right here. Nice. Okay, so here's the photo of the vehicle. Oh my lord. All right, so let me put us up here.
It looks like there's a little alien there.
All right, so you see the white right here, right? That's the street. Then you got the car right here. Yeah, look, there's no wheels on it. Oh my God. Oh, that's so long ago. You got to have fun though, because it's crazy what some people will come up with. But yes, so this is why I think this is the video
And the
of
fingers right here.
yeah, you can see the camera from the phone. This is what I'm saying. When you're taking footage of a monitor, like okay, so think about this. When you're seeing this photo, imagine if you're looking at it, you're in that room. It's going to be pretty damn clear. Now, will the image be kind of stretched? Uh what I think is that somebody wasn't smart enough to hit the pause button, okay? Because that car couldn't have been going 70 miles an hour when that photo was taken, like those headlights stretch. So to me, it's somebody that's taking a picture of a video that's moving. They weren't even smart enough to. They were nervous. They saw a white car. They probably got, because remember, they got called in. They got called in to go look at that footage. And so somebody probably wasn't smart enough to pause it. And that's where you get the stretch of the image, because when you're looking at this part of the street, okay, yes, you could be going 60, 70 miles an hour. But when you're looking at this part of the street, okay, and you see this curve that's coming up and a stop sign, you ain't going to be going 60, 70 mile an hour right here. Because if you are, you're probably going to skid and fly right into this river. Okay. You're not going to do it. You're
Oh,
not going to do it. And so that's why,
that was
I feel like,
hilarious. I mean, and people were looking at that photo for so long that you start seeing things and no wheels. And then you start, it's just,
yeah, no wheels. Yeah, I'm like, oh my Lord, what is this world coming to? What is this world? Like I said, it's just like Linda Lane. If you sit there and you watch it long enough, you'll see stuff and hear stuff if you want to. If somebody's like, hey, listen to this timestamp and see if you hear somebody squealing Ethan, right? You
oh,
might. Well, this is what I want people to understand too. A lot of people think that this audio that's coming from Linda Lane that they're discussing, no, it's the audio that's coming from this house right here, and that's the camera. 1112. Now, it won't let us go on Queen Road, okay? But you can see 1112 from right here. But basically, this is the house, okay? You remember you saw the video of the porch and the photos of all the 1122 students hanging out at this house? They hung out at this house, right? You remember the porch. This is the camera right here that picked up the video of the T section. That according to law enforcement, this is going to be the camera that has the video. And when they say the camera was 50 feet away, when it comes to the audio, in fact, the camera is not 50 feet away. The camera is about 65 to 70. So when you look it up on Google Earth, now, if you're going from the screen door is back here, which makes it even longer. But when you're looking at the camera, that's at 1112, and you're talking about the closest audio that the crimes could have been committed and people would have heard it, would have been coming out of these windows right here towards the back of the property. And you can see it right there. It's 64 feet. And that's not counting if the sound came from the sliding glass door, which is what they are trying to tell you. So that doesn't even match up either. But that's the audio that they're talking about when it's coming to this case. All right, we'll switch it back down to here. And thank you all for being here. Appreciate it very much. I know you probably are already, but if you're not subbed to Yoli, here's her link. Go sub up, and we will get into this court hearing. Now, you had mentioned before when you did the timestamps, unknown FBI agent Douglas, federal stalking investigation.
Yeah.
When it
You can
comes,
let this one run too if you, because I picked out some things that I thought, that I wanted to go over. But if you want to let it run, there might be other things other people want to
yeah,
hear.
yeah, we'll go through it and then we'll just kind of
Okay.
pause it like we did with Payne.
Yeah.
All right, this is Detective Mowie.
All right, the defense calls Detective Mowie.
All right, if Detective Mowie can come and be sworn. One of my staff took the opportunity to take a break. They'll be back in a second, so we'll just get them sworn in and we'll wait for them.
You solemnly swear affirm the testimony you're about to give now before the court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Pam, the judge with the permanent
And
headache.
it's fine if you just want to start with if you're going to ask him his background, you can do that.
How did we do this where the comments didn't cover sub?
Good morning.
Morning.
Detective Mowie, could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
My name is Lawrence Mowery, Mowery.
What's your current job?
I am a forensic detective with the Moscow Police Department.
And could you tell us about your background in law enforcement?
I have 14 years of law enforcement experience in the state of Idaho. I've been with the Moscow Police Department for the last 6 years in this current role.
What is your role in this case?
I was, put in charge of, lead, I don't know. I was the one that was looking at and funneling the excessive amount of digital data and evidence that was coming through.
Funneling? So yeah, it's like he's already the lead right there. I was in charge of distributing the information.
This is the information that's incoming. So when Payne says he doesn't know which officer was going through it, well, it was this guy, I guess, Mowie.
Typically, by the way, go sub up to her too. Her and her husband
Oh yeah.
discuss Idaho 4.2. Let me drop her link. We got to have you up. We got to have you and your husband up. If you guys might be kind of late, reach out to me. Do me a favor. Reach out to me if you guys want to come on panel with us, because they have a lot of good conversations when it comes to all this stuff too. Yeah, definitely go sub up. Her and her husband do great shows over there. But this right here, I was in charge of
I guess I was in charge, or
I guess. I wonder how mad that made Brett Payne feel. Like, I'm top dog, I'm Scrappy. He's Scrappy Doo. Remember? You got Scooby Doo, and then he's Scrappy Doo. He's a little Scooby Doo guy that wants to fight everybody. He's the pit bull, the go getter. Look at him.
Have you taken on any other roles in this case? Have you had other duties?
If you're asking about serving warrants for digital evidence, then I've done that, yes.
And you've heard Judge Mike.
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Do you agree that the Exhibit A that's been discussed was an attached to warrants, that was a group effort?
Yes,
Have you been a part of that group?
I was.
What role did you have in the first AT&T warrant?
I don't recall specifically. I was there when it was being discussed.
You recall that you served that warrant?
I do.
When you served that warrant, did you serve it with the search warrant with the affidavit in support of search warrant attached.
No, ma'am.
Is it your practice to ever serve an affidavit in support of search warrant with the warrant?
No, ma'am.
Were you co-located with Special Agent Nicholas Balance as well?
Yes, ma'am.
What was the distance that you had in proximity to him?
He sat in the same lab that I did.
And so was that a cubicle setting? Can you describe the setting?
It's a secured forensic lab. It has a door.
Secured forensic lab that has a door. To me, that's a trailer that's parked on a location. You know, no, seriously,
Yeah.
seriously. But how can it be a secured lab with one door? That's to me,
Well,
what kind of lab are we talking about here? Because when I think lab, I think you're doing testing and it should be sterile environment, right? What if you just went to
Not if it's
Jack in the
forensic.
Box?
If it's a digital forensics lab, then
Yeah,
know,
that's what I'm saying. It depends on what kind of lab. So, but to me, that's a trailer. I mean, you see them happen when they need to have a headquarters, on location somewhere. They'll pop up with a trailer and it's got a door. So to me, it sounds like it was just a trailer where they had a couple desks. Why did they have to go there?
Well, I guess that's where they were analyzing the digital information. But you hear that Balance, that this Detective Balance was also sitting next to Payne.
Yeah.
So
And the
was Payne-
FBI agents too.
Was Payne also in the lab? I mean,
Had to be.
It was overbroad when she says, "How close was he sitting to you?" I mean, at what point in time? I mean, they weren't sitting there every single day, every minute. So the question is kind of overbroad. I mean, it needs to be more specific.
Yeah, but he answered specific about the door. There's
He
just
did.
one. There's just
Yeah.
one. So there was no separation. And when you're looking at investigations, if they got to pop up a headquarters somewhere, they usually typically get a trailer, like a construction company would do at a site. They'll have a trailer or two trailers as their base or whatever. But yeah, because he would have. I mean, if she's, I think what she's trying to include is that everybody was kind of aware of the discussions and what was taking place. So for Payne to sit there and say, I don't recall, or I can't remember, or I wasn't part of those discussions, I think she's trying to sit there and slam these guys like, y'all were sitting there together. How are you sitting here telling us that you weren't aware when you had to be aware? Because you're sitting, quote, mere feet, like Brett Payne said. I think she was trying to get that information from him. I think she was trying to get the mere feet from him too, just to show. How many windows? Yeah, that's a good question. Probably 2, because those trailers only usually have 2 windows on one side, and it's the same side as the door. So I don't know, but he did say door. If he's being a smart aleck, he would have said doors or multiple doors or 2 doors or 3 doors, but no, he just said there's a door.
That is weird that he mentioned the one door.
Yeah. Yep. You got to add the S if there is, even if it's like a door for a bathroom or something, Where's the bathroom? Oh yeah, an outhouse right next to the right next to the trailer. That's pretty sanitary, right? Yeah, teachers use trailers sometimes too. Yeah. Yeah. They're like little mini headquarters.
And then inside, is it open? Were you in separate offices?
It's a single room.
Single room. And so you were literally in the same room with Agent Balance.
Yes, ma'am.
And was that for the entire time that he was co-located there?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you aware of his ability to have access to AT&T records without a warrant?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am. I bet you he was. Come on now. That's why I think all these questions are being asked, because I think they really are going to try and show that Brett Payne and Mowie know a hell of a lot more than what they're claiming, and it's because they don't want to answer to what actually was going down, and they know that they can't have the FBI go up there and ask them what was going on. Uh-huh. Interesting.
Right. I want to talk now about the cell phone, also known as the USB. Do you recognize that? Brian, I should say, I'm so sorry because there are so many cell phones. Brian Koberger's cell phone. I want to talk to you
The
about.
physical cell phone or the data from the cell phone?
We're going to talk about both of those.
Okay.
So for purposes of today's argument, we've called it cell phone / USB. How did the state come into possession of Brian's phone?
Obtained via the warrant in Pennsylvania.
Was a copy of that phone made prior to the search warrant being signed?
Which search
Copy
warrant?
of Brian's cell phone.
Again, I'm asking which search warrant you're talking about, the one from Pennsylvania or the one that we requested once the data returned?
I'm talking about when it was first seized. So it'd be the first,
The Pennsylvania one?
right?
I do not know.
You're aware that a copy of the phone was made and put on a USB,
Yes.
and then a warrant was obtained to search the USB.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the second warrant.
Yes, ma'am.
Was the cell phone searched prior to the warrant for the USB?
The extraction was created before the warrant in Idaho was requested.
Was the extraction searched before the warrant was obtained in Idaho?
No.
And how do you know that?
I was the one that received the extraction.
The extraction, where was the extraction made?
Pennsylvania.
And who made that extraction?
I believe it was Special Agent Tanzola.
And how did Special Agent Tanzola get that extraction to you?
You'd have to ask him. I believe it was using a Cellbrite product.
So what about is the USB not a physical box of the extraction, or is it all digital?
The USB is just a storage device that the data would be placed onto.
So with the extraction and the USB, can you explain the process of the extraction being made and it getting to you and it getting put on a USB?
Normally in a forensic environment, the device is extracted, that extraction can then therefore be placed onto a different storage device for evidence storage or for sharing with other forensic investigators.
And so you said normally, but I'm asking you specifically to Brian Koberger's cell phone.
The data was placed on the storage device by S.A. Tanzola and provided to me.
Okay. And how did you get the storage device?
I believe it was brought back. I don't recall how I was given to it. It was still in the FBI packaging.
Do you have any personal knowledge of whether or not Special Agent Tanzola reviewed the data of the extraction before the search warrant in Idaho was obtained?
I don't recall.
Okay.
They better recall when it comes to trial. Better read your damn notes.
Judge, this is one you don't have yet either. This is Defendant's Exhibit A to cell phone. And it does have a sticker on it.
Do you have an extra copy of that?
Pardon?
Do you have an extra copy?
The ones, I handed 2, right?
Yeah, and just in going forward, I need 2 copies.
I will. I heard that message yesterday, Judge, and I apologize. Moving forward, I will make sure that there's that extra. I'm assuming you went up for your clerk. So.
My staff attorney,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, I got some right here.
And just for the record, as I've been doing, this has been marked Defendant's Exhibit Number A with a date on the sticker of 11/14/24. The document on which the sticker is placed, first page is affidavit for search warrant. Directed to the Moscow Police Department Forensic Lab.
Detective, how did you create the affidavit in support of the cell phone of the USB warrant?
How did I create it?
Yes.
So I'm not understanding. That's a vague question.
How did you go about drafting this? Is this a document that you had that you filled in from, or did you start from scratch? How did you
I
come
don't
up?
remember the exact way that I did it, but it's not, this isn't very different from, say, an ICAC warrant that I would have had previous intentions to search the cyber tip information that would be already placed into evidence at the digital forensic lab.
So there's knowledge about what you're asking for and lists of things to get, what are you basing that knowledge on?
I would be basing this on information that I've done in previous cases, other warrants that I have served, and other warrants that I have viewed from other investigators throughout my time.
Can you turn to page 24?
Sometimes this takes
See
a
that
little,
page?
Yes, ma'am.
a little bit.
And is
too,
that page entitled Search Warrant?
Yes, ma'am.
typically?
Looking at the first paragraph of that search warrant, is there any reference to search warrant affidavit in the warrant?
No, ma'am.
And is the date of the crime on the search warrant?
No, ma'am.
On page 25, can you turn there?
What's up, Amy?
There's a directive to search the premises. Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
What's up,
What's the
everybody?
premises located as, listed as?
155 South U in Moscow, Idaho, in the forensic lab. 155 South View, one word.
Does it say USB in that descriptor?
No, ma'am.
Can you turn to page 28?
By the way, if you're just joining, definitely check out the beginning of the show when we went through the new document drop. It's a bunch of BS. Me and Yolie discussed it for about 25 minutes or so. It's kind of messed up. And thank you for going through that in the beginning too, when you were sharing what they were talking about, because when you were first bringing it up and reading through it, I thought they were also using it for part of the motive and all that, but obviously they're not.
Yeah, I thought they were using it for the preparation and plan, but
Yeah.
they're not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Makes no sense. Definitely check it out. I'll be making a highlight out of it maybe tomorrow or something. Thank you all for being here.
Who is Key Computer Forensic Lab?
This is
Key
funny.
is not a person, it's a thing. It unlocked the secure cubicle that the USB was placed into by myself so that it was secured. I had the key, and entrance was obtained by Key in the Computer Forensic Lab.
That makes sense now. I thought it was the name of a company, and I don't know why, but that makes sense. Key Computer.
She should have just like Key Computer. You should have just kept going, lady. Don't even just keep moving, you know?
Forensic Lab. Who was ultimately in charge of searching the USB drive?
The data was extracted, or not extracted, but reviewed by several different people.
Okay, who are those people?
I don't know all of them. Myself looked at some of the information, but not all.
And you said you don't remember all of them, but who else do you remember?
The information was also given to the FBI. The FBI had that information and they examined it.
And do you know who with the FBI?
No, I do not.
See, how could you not know?
Right?
That's why I say that I don't knows are almost worse than I don't recall.
Yeah, Mowie. Maybe that's why they asked him some questions, because they're like, damn, he didn't stick to the script. I don't recall. Damn it. Oh, there should be. Yes, for all of it.
Can you turn to page 27?
All of it. Yes. Logs and logs and logs and binders and
Can you look at page 6?
boxes and
Or not
label.
page 6, I'm sorry. Number 6, line number 6. Do you see that?
Stickers too.
What does that say?
Copy of the warrant inventory sheet were left with the drive.
And that does not indicate that a copy of the search warrant affidavit was left with the drive. Is that right?
Oh, man.
Nope. Just the tip, Yolie. Just the tip. That's it.
Okay, I want to talk now about Amazon. Did you swear to several warrants for Amazon?
I did.
Do you know specifically how many?
I do not recall how many.
Do not recall.
How were the warrants served? How did you serve Amazon warrants?
Come on.
I believe that Special Agent Michael Douglas assisted in service of those.
What training do you have in Amazon accounts and records?
I do not have any training for Amazon specifically.
And I think you answered my next question, but there was a reference in the warrants to a special agent locating an Amazon account. Is that the Special Agent Douglas?
I don't recall who was that, who found that information.
How was an Amazon account located?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's why I was like, when I was watching this live inside, because I was sick as a dog, but inside I'm sitting there going, I'm like jumping up in my chair in my mind, like, how is this?
I don't know. They're just, I don't know. I don't know how he could.
You don't recall, Yolie. You don't recall. She just mutes it.
affidavit where you've got language that talks about what Amazon holds and how it identifies and the list of items that can be collected, if you don't have any training in doing an Amazon warrant, how did you know that?
I was relying on the experts that have worked with or served the warrants to Amazon previously. I believe that information came from Special Agent Michael Douglas.
And in your affidavit, did you indicate that that was based on your knowledge or on someone else's knowledge?
I based it on mine because I spoke to Special Agent Michael Douglas about it. He was the one that informed me that this was the information that we could request.
And so did he provide you with a kind of a mock-up affidavit to use so that you would know what language to include?
I don't remember if he gave me a mock-up, but obviously he would have helped me with the wording of it.
The wording of the warrants is pretty technical, right? All the list of items that is asked for.
The electronic service provider usually has the special way of asking for things.
And so since you don't have training in Amazon, you relied on Special Agent Douglas for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Google is the next one I want to talk to you about. What's your training about Google?
Again, I have no specific training to Google. I've served various email or warrants on Google for other means.
Is your experience with Google isolated to this case?
No.
You've done Google warrants before?
Oh, yes.
How did you get the form that you used for the Google warrant in this case?
The Google form, I probably relied on previous warrants that I've served.
Do you know how many warrants you obtained for Google in this case?
It's 3.
On January 3rd, that January 3rd, 2023, that warrant asked for Brian Christopher 1994 at Gmail, 2 phone numbers, and an IMEI number. What's an IMEI?
International Mobile Equipment Identifier.
And how did you get that number to put in the January 3rd, 2023 Google warrant?
I do not recall.
Okay.
I do not recall. You notice after they started coughing, then he started the no, I do not recall. I do not recall. Before that, I don't remember. Oh, it's not like. Oh man, it's so. How does this even? So the judge can't. I mean, never mind. I already asked that question and I already know the answer. I'm just still sitting here asking it again. My bad. I just don't understand. I don't understand.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, a coughing code. That's right. And yes, Judge Gummy is back, ladies and gentlemen, just for a short time, though. Oh, the papers. They only get to ask the FBI a question if the FBI goes up to answer them. Otherwise, no. They don't have to. Typically, they might in their own, but this wasn't their investigation. This was Moscow's and Idaho State Patrol, or State Police, I mean. It was their investigation. FBI just assisted. Did an FBI agent testify?
I'm not sure. I have no idea.
I don't remember.
But when they were arguing in the last the hearing on the 23rd, there was some reference to something that made me think that an FBI might have been questioned in the sealed hearing. But I mean, I don't know.
Oh, the sealed
part.
Oh, maybe it was for the vehicle.
Probably, yeah.
The vehicle.
But we don't know for sure. Yeah. But well, the redacted transcript's going to come out.
That's where I think, that's where I think the fight between, or the issues between the FBI and Moscow PD arose, was when they veered from the 2011 to 2013, which is what they were given from the FBI. I think that's when the FBI started to get upset with them, is because they ended up going with the 2015, when you're questioning an FBI's agent of over 30 years of expertise on identifying vehicles from footage. And they've been telling you 2011 to 13 the whole time. And then after they switch it, I think that's when the FBI was like, this is a hot potato. We're backing away and we're not going to do shit else. Because they were like, what are they doing? You got an FBI agent, they're over 30 years experience. FBI, they don't just hire Joe Schmo off the block. And then he's telling you 2011 to 13 the whole time, and then you switch it. When you supposedly knew who he was on August 21st, I could see the FBI going, you know what, these guys don't know what they're doing, and we need to back away as soon as possible. Don't help them out anymore. Don't give them nothing unless it's for the trial or whatever. Other than that, I think they wanted to get as distant as, have as much distance as possible from them at that point. But that's just my opinion, though.
These long pauses.
Yeah, and the papers.
Were you, in preparation for creating these warrants, were you having communications with Google?
Specifically about these warrants?
About being able to get the data via warrants?
I don't recall communicating with them specific to these warrants.
Okay, I'm going to hand you what's Defendant's Exhibit F to the Google Memorandum in Support. You recognize that?
Appears to be an email between myself and a Francis from Google.
So is this how you were communicating with Google, via email?
I was communicating with Google for other, I'm not sure if this is the one for this specific warrant, I guess is where I'm getting at. There was question of what Google could provide. We served Google at one point with a warrant. They said it was, they couldn't do it because there'd be too much data. So they were trying to assist us in, well, basically not spending $100,000 of getting them data.
So to be clear, when I'm talking about the communications generally, I'm talking about your communications with Google about all the warrants. So was there email and telephone communications, or just email?
I believe I spoke with their legal representation on the phone. I don't remember if there was other conversations.
Do you understand the difference between a personal account and a not personal account on Google?
I do not.
Well, there's reference to DeSales and DeSales helping from their end. Can you explain that?
I don't recall what that means.
I'm going to pause it real quick. Mark and Betty's got a good question, Yolie. Would it surprise you if this didn't get to trial?
I don't know. Would it surprise me? I think it would, because I think it does need to go to a trial. Because I don't see, well, unless there's something with these warrants, and that's the part that I'm weak on. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, she's going to have to move. If the evidence gets suppressed, she's going to have to make a motion to dismiss it based on the fact that there was no probable cause. Because like the IGG, they said they're not going to use it at trial, but that's how they got to him. So if that gets thrown out, then there was no probable cause. So she's going to have to file some kind of motion that there was no probable cause to arrest him and that information should be suppressed. And then there's no case. But with these warrants, I don't know if there's enough to hold him. I mean, what did they get? They got a Google search of his phone. What did that show? They got Amazon, warrant for Amazon and these other companies. What did that show? I don't know.
No.
They have this car, but they don't have license plates. They don't have him getting inside the house. They don't have video of that.
They're using video and photos of shit Ring camera versions instead of the downtown cameras that they should have used in either city, Pullman or Moscow. That right there, you can see a silhouette in a vehicle with no tint.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things on these warrants that I don't totally understand, and I've tried to, but it's how they're served and whether they're served with the affidavit for that warrant. I don't know. I don't understand it, and I feel like I'm missing something. Like something must be sealed, and there's a reason why she's asking this. But otherwise, I don't know the significance.
And this right here too, when you're talking about the justice for these victims, because that's what you're supposed to be doing, right?
Right. And so this email she must have received through discovery, the email that she's going over with him. He may not have recalled a specific email. And so now she's refreshing his recollection with the email that was turned over. Because the Mowie is not necessarily going to know what all's been turned over in discovery. But okay, so you don't remember sending an email. So if she has a copy of the email, she can show it to him to refresh his recollection, which is what she's doing.
Yeah, I think there's major issues with the warrants in the process too. Especially when I was listening to this court hearing, I'm like, how do you get warrants the way you got the warrants in the first place?
The warrants build upon one another, as at least that's how I understand it. So the first warrant, you'll hear it when she argues. Yeah,
it's some tricky dicky shit, is what it is. It's some Nixon shit, is what's going on.
I feel like I'm missing something. Like there's probably something with the warrants and the service of process, but I don't know. It seems like there's something missing, and the reason why she's asking is for a reason, and that reason is sealed. Maybe they misled somebody. I have no idea.
Bill Thompson is not a crook.
Do you recognize what DeSales is in the course of this case?
It references an email address that was associated with the defendant.
Okay. And that email address associated with the defendant is a college that he attended, right?
Yes.
And so what was there communication with DeSales about them not wanting to produce records pursuant to a warrant because it was educational records protected by federal law?
I was part of a little bit of that. Officer Detective Payne knew more about that conversation, but yes.
And so what I'm trying to understand is what was DeSales doing to help?
I believe DeSales was just waiting for a warrant. I don't recall completely.
And did you serve the Google warrants?
I believe I did.
I believe you said you did.
Yes.
And consistent with what you've said earlier, you did not include an affidavit in support of search warrant with
No,
that?
ma'am.
Why did you choose the timeframe of January 1st, 2021 to December 30th, 2022?
I don't recall the specific reason why we went back to January 1. It was to include the time that we believed that the defendant had entered Washington to become a student nearby the crime scene and just prior to that.
But you know that he didn't come to Pullman, Washington until June of 2022, right?
Correct.
Did your Google warrant return emails?
Yes.
Did you review? So you said you reviewed them. Are you the one who's in charge of evaluating those materials for this case, or is that designated to somebody else?
The materials came to myself, at which time it was disseminated to other investigators and the FBI as well.
Is it fair to say that between warrant 1 and warrant 3, it's gone from 2 gigs to over 13 gigs of material?
It was substantial information.
And have you done anything to verify whether or not the materials produced are within the scope of the warrants?
I usually made sure that they were from that specific account when it's received, but I did not go into depth of the evaluation.
Let's talk. The final area is about the Apple warrant. What was your role in those warrants? In that warrant? Sorry, not plural, singular.
I don't remember that specific one. I know I was involved in a lot of the Apple iCloud warrants.
What kind of communications did you have with Apple to facilitate getting the warrant?
I don't recall prior to.
I'll hand you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit C to the Apple warrant. It does have a sticker on it. And it's not to the Apple warrant, it's to the memorandum in support.
Exhibit C attached to their memorandum dated, exhibit sticker dated 11/14/24. Appears to be a printout of some emails.
Oh, the papers. Come on.
Have you reviewed those?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you, does that help refresh your recollection regarding what communications were occurring?
It appears that there was communication between Apple and the FBI.
Okay. And were you included in that?
I believe I was.
Okay. And did that include chats?
I believe the word chat means to chat, to talk.
Like telephone talk or Zoom talk, or what was the method?
I
Chat.
believe it was telephonic.
So what kind of help were you getting from
Telephonic.
Apple, and what was the FBI getting from Apple?
I don't recall the conversation. This was more specific to the FBI's current investigation. As I stated in my email there for the stalking investigation, I was merely just privy to their conversation.
Did you hear that? Rewind that just a little bit.
Let's see. He was privy. Right here.
Was the FBI getting from Apple?
I don't recall the,
Oh, hold on.
Okay. And did that include chats?
I believe the word chat means to chat, to talk.
Like telephone talk or Zoom talk, or what was the method?
I believe it was telephonic.
What kind of help were you getting from Apple, and what was the FBI getting from Apple?
I don't recall the conversation. This was more specific to the FBI's current investigation. As I stated in my email there for the stalking investigation, I was merely just
See,
privy to their.
The FBI
Is
was
the one that doing the stalking.
was investigating the federal stalking as well. So there probably, and this is just speculation, there probably was an a federal grand jury that did not indict Koberger on stalking charges. So because later they talk, or not in this hearing, but they talk about federal subpoenas that they want, and from a grand jury. So either the grand jury was investigating, because they can do that, the federal grand jury, or they had a grand jury hearing on whether to indict Koberger for the federal stalking charges, and it didn't go anywhere. They didn't indict. So that was interesting why he brought that up, because the FBI was doing their own investigation. And he brought that up. He said, because he was probably involved in that as well. So not only was the FBI helping Idaho, Moscow PD, and the state, they were also doing an investigation into stalking, which never came true. Now, I remember when Howard Bloom came up, it started saying there's going to be federal charges, there's going to be federal charges. There haven't been any federal charges. I don't know why they think that, but and that may be where Mr. Gonzalez got the idea that there was stalking, because they probably told him, there was an investigation by the FBI for stalking. So that's,
He
and
came to the house.
yeah. So I thought that was interesting that Maury brought that up.
Yeah, he basically is telling you we didn't do any of it. It was them, because him or Payne didn't have much knowledge of it.
And they were investigating him separately, it sounds like, the FBI.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So maybe as much stuff as we think would be unsealed might not, just because it involves a lot of their investigation, and they're not going to use, kind of like when Bill Thompson brought up that case a long time ago about how the FBI didn't have to, he was trying to manipulate the situation, trying to make it seem like they didn't have to show the tools that they didn't want exposed to the general public, like it was an argument to suppress the information. But if you look into the background of that case, they actually, it didn't come into play in that case, because they didn't have the special agents testifying on behalf of how they got to their suspects. So it's kind of like what they're talking about right here too, where it's like, hey, and I think they'll use that as an excuse if he gets found not guilty. I think they'll use that as an excuse, like, hey, that we had the right stuff. We couldn't show you how we got it, but we know we have the right individual, and we're sorry that the jury doesn't feel the same way, and we're not going to go search for the person that committed this crime. That doesn't deal with the person that just got off, and that's not justice at all either. It kind of sounds like that's what's going to happen.
It's crazy.
Yeah. You can see it right now taking place. They don't know much. They were in the same building, one door.
Yeah,
they don't.
because they're it's interesting because the FBI was doing its own investigation along with helping Idaho. So did the materials get all screwed up? I mean, like what was privy to what was supposed to be privy to the FBI and not the Idaho state or Moscow PD? It's like it's so confusing.
FBI is the one that came out with the car. FBI is the one that came out with the DNA. FBI's obviously was doing their own stalking investigation. It makes you wonder because we already know that there was 60 agents out there already investigating something before the crime took place.
Right.
Maybe the reason that they were doing all this investigating of him was because of they thought maybe it was part of what they're investigating.
Yeah,
really,
I know.
And that's why they did but when nothing comes out of it,
then they back out.
Right. And the Oregon car is a bust. They have to hurry up and switch it to something else.
Yeah, it's
because the new semester is coming up, and I think that's where the FBI is like, hot potato. We've already done this. We told you it didn't, I don't know. We'll see. I can't wait for this trial. Back when they announced when it was going to take place, it was like, oh my gosh, that's so long from now. But really, it's coming up soon. It's coming up soon, just a few months.
Conversation.
Typically. Hopefully they will, but I have a feeling that it's going to be one of those.
All of their materials related to that been turned over?
Who's there in that sentence? Kelsey?
Pardon?
Who's there in that sentence?
Sorry, FBI.
I do not know. I wasn't.
I do not know.
I don't know.
I have no further questions.
A few questions, Yolie. Nice to stay here. Okay.
Asked if she could stay there, and he said no.
Right? Yeah. Why would she ask to stay there?
I don't know.
Maybe her laptop battery might die or something.
I don't know.
Questions? When you received the evidence back from these various providers, did you have access to what we refer to as affidavit for search warrant and Exhibit A?
Yes.
Okay. And did you use that to determine the scope of what you would be searching for from those providers?
If I was to be doing the investigation, yes, I would have looked at those items.
And you testified that several investigators helped MPD in review of evidence back from providers.
Yes.
To your knowledge, did those investigators have access to the affidavit and the Exhibit A?
Yes.
I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Can you redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Special agents.
Thank you, Your Honor.
More special agents.
I have no further witnesses.
All right, why don't we take a 10-minute recess and we'll pick up.
Okay, I have a feeling I know now why they're talking about the service and the warrants and all of that, because it's possible that the FBI had their own warrants they were serving for their own investigation, and the state and Moscow PD piggybacked on those. Yeah. In other words, they didn't do their own investigation. Rather, they just took what the FBI was doing. The tip.
Yeah, the tip.
The tip.
What I've been saying this whole time. They just took the tip. People were like, oh my gosh, you're spreading so much misinformation back then. It's like, no, it's just common sense.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that. I mean, I don't know for sure, but that's what it's sounding like now that I'm listening to it. Because the affidavit could be by an FBI agent that is getting it for his own investigation, and they're just using that to get it, to use it in the case, the state case against Brian Koberger, and they're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, because according to Payne, that's to the best of his knowledge. And when he's telling you how he came up with the stuff that he wrote down, he's telling you he got it from other people.
But he got it from other people, and we don't. And so if the provider is giving information, they may think that they're giving information for a stalking case where they want this whole period of time of data, as opposed to a unaliving case. And maybe somebody was misled as well, but like I said, this is just speculation. I don't know. I'm just trying to put the pieces together because I don't know anything about warrants, but what's happening now is I'm starting to see that maybe they cut corners and they started using what the FBI was doing for their own investigation.
Yep.
And it didn't go anywhere because there's no stalking charge in the state case.
Yeah. They used the tip, hurried up and charged somebody, waited for the evidence to materialize, and it never materialized. It's what I've been saying. It's crazy when it takes 2 years for this stuff to come out as true finally. It's like you feel you've been saying this for 2 years, and finally you're like, man, all those people that wanted to talk shit back then, and it's like, no, this is true. We're just seeing it now. And I'm thinking that the judge is starting to see it too. I think he is. I think that's why you're going to see a lot of these rulings that were ruled for a certain way for so long up in Moscow. It's going to be different now that we're in Boise.
Yeah, that's my best guess as to why they're doing this anyway. My best.
It makes sense. When Payne's telling you he got all of his information from other people, he even got the Murphy being there from a body cam of another officer. You're telling me that part of your police department, you couldn't sit down with the dude and review the body cam with him? You had to just watch his body cam. You couldn't even talk to him. I mean, come on. That right there is some rushed crap. Like, okay, we got this, you got this from this person, you got this from this person. Now we need to show you this because it's to the best of your knowledge. We need this inside of this exhibit A, so we got to show you this body cam. All right, now you know there's a dog, all of these different things. All right, now just sign the paper to the best of your knowledge because you can go back in the future and say, well, it was to the best of my knowledge at the time.
Yeah.
It's
because if the FBI had information based on his phone data way back, let's say they go back a certain amount of time, and there might be something in there that could help Moscow PD in some way. They may have given him, I don't know, but it's information that they probably shouldn't have, the Moscow PD and Idaho State, but because they're supposed to do their own investigation. So I don't know. We'll see.
Well, this is what I'm wondering. Why are we talking to Moscow PD and not ISP?
I don't know, but I think we don't know who testified in the sealed hearing. Maybe.
True.
We don't know. Let me see.
You think one of them would be up here, though?
Maybe, but these were the two alleged lead investigators.
Alleged.
Yeah.
I don't recall. All right, so this is after Mowie just got done. He's sitting back there. Now this is the prosecution and the defense kind of discussing a little more about all this here. And Taylor's going to be coming up here too.
The Koberger defendant is present. Counsel are all present. I'm heard that there are no more witnesses to present by either party. Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right, we'll move to argument then. The defense may proceed.
Judge, I'm going to cover several of the warrants, and then Mr. Logson's going to cover 4. So I'll just wrap all of my argument up instead of getting up and down for each one. My oral argument is not meant to rehash every point briefed or every argument briefed. I'm giving you big picture comments based on the testimony, but I want to make it clear that we're not waiving any written arguments. While I question Corporal Payne and Detective Mowie about some exhibits, but not all, it was not an indication that others are not important. I wanted to make important points, but not belabor. With IGG and Franks having been addressed yesterday, and the fact that the primary issues that I'm addressing have to do with general warrants, I'm not going to rehash those arguments, and I'm going to focus on the legal issues, beginning with the AT&T Warrant 1, Pin, Trap, and Trace, also known as AT&T 2, and the cell phone / USB drive. The Fourth Amendment requires particularity sufficient to prevent the exercise of discretion by an executing officer. The particularity requirement's objective is that necessary searches should be as limited as possible. A search warrant must be particular enough so that as to what is taken, nothing is left to the discretion of the officer executing the warrant. The government cannot seize the haystack to look for a needle. And there is an undisputed privacy interest in cell phone data, including cellular site data pursuant to Carpenter. All 3 of these warrants were issued in December 23rd and early January 2023. The 2 AT&T warrants were issued on December 23rd, 2022, within an hour of each other. The first did have a temporal narrowing. AT&T 1 had November 12th, 12 a.m. to November 14th, 12 a.m. The warrant itself was extremely broad and did not incorporate the affidavit. In support of this actual failure to incorporate, the officers admitted that they did not incorporate in the search, but to the extent that the state is going to argue that when the warrant says upon offer and proof, that is the same as hereby incorporates an affidavit, I pointed out the language in certain search warrant affidavits to show you that they do know what it means to actually use the language herein is incorporated Exhibit A, and that same language is not used in a single search warrant affidavit. So the incorporation that would be a remedy for this issue potentially of particularity doesn't exist when the search warrant affidavit is not included. Even if for some reason you were to determine that there was English language meaning upon proof, an oath is the same as hereby incorporated, the language in the search warrant affidavits themselves is extremely broad. The affidavit of return signed by Detective Payne's, this is on affidavit AT&T 1, says that the warrant was served by email, and as he indicated, it did not include the search warrant in support. The description of the property in Exhibit A to AT&T described the property as just a phone number with no other description of the property, which indicates a lack of knowledge of what was actually seized and going to be searched. The second AT&T warrant and install pin trace was requested within 1 hour of the first warrant return at 3:50. The data from warrant 1 was analyzed such that by Special Agent Balance, such that Detective Payne was relying on Balance in his affidavit to support it by saying that the data that had been in their hands for less than an hour supported that the phone was possibly off going south on Pullman at 2:42 a.m. And there is just got to be a question for everybody of how does this massive amount of data get analyzed in an hour to create a second broader warrant. The warrant language in AT&T2 pin trap trace is extremely broad, and the time frame goes from June 23 to 2020, June 23rd, 2022 to present. The crime of homicide was stated, but the date of the crime was not stated. There was no other specificity in the actual warrant. The warrant asked for extensive data, location data, timing reports, cell tower information, and installation of a pin, trap, and trace, among other many things. And when the warrant was served, a check the box form was included as a cover sheet to AT&T. Turning to the cell phone is first seized when Brian is arrested. It's copied by Special Agent Tanzola without a warrant, and then that USB drive makes its way to Idaho in an unclear fashion. It sounds to me like it came back with Corporal Payne, who was there for the arrest. And when that warrant is obtained for that USB drive, it's put in a safe with just a copy of the warrant that has no date of the crime, and there's nothing particularized about what is to be searched. This creates a general warrant with 100% total discretion and nothing to limit the search. And if you believe that access within a database by somebody unidentified other than Mowie, who's going to evaluate that warrant, that they're going to look and pull that finalized search warrant from the database that everybody supposedly has access to, looking at that search warrant affidavit, there's full discretion to search the USB drive. There's no limitations and no efforts taken to address that. Turning now to Google and Apple. A very instructive case on Google and Apple is the Idaho Pilling case, which is 721 FSUP 3D 1113 2024. It's almost totally on point with this case. It is a federal case out of the District of Idaho, but it really couldn't be more instructive in terms of looking at these issues with Google and Apple. There's without a doubt a recognized protected interest of private information in Google and Apple records. Google contained private emails, schoolwork, research, among things, and Apple was essentially a copy of a phone and iPad that went all the way back to 2016. 2018 was an indication of when an iPad was purchased, but 2016, according to the documents that were prepared, were when it was identified that an Apple account was first created. Carpenter applies, and to the extent that there may be third-party materials like search history not related or documented, nothing was done to do any sort of segregation with regard to Apple or Google. For the Google warrant, by January 3rd, 2023, law enforcement knew many details that they could have used to narrow those warrants. They knew that Brian hadn't been in Pullman until June of 2022. They knew the names of the deceased, which were not included as language in the Google warrant. They knew the fraternities and sororities. They knew the students' names who had also been at the house on the morning of November 13th, 2022. They knew the date of the crime, of course. They knew emails. They knew social media accounts and names. They knew where students worked. They knew their friends. They knew their phone numbers. None of that was included in the Google warrant to help limit and make that something other than a general warrant. There's no language incorporating these search warrant affidavits, making these broad, sweeping categories, making the productions bigger and bigger. In Google, it went from 2 gigabytes to 13 gigabytes by the third production. And it appears that it's really unclear to these detectives that have taken a huge role in this case,
Thank you, Mark.
who's evaluating what data and to what extent and what is being produced by it and what is within the scope of what is in an already broad warrant.
Yes, broad.
For Apple, we are missing some sort of legal process that the state just hasn't filled the gap on, and these witnesses don't fill the gap on. We don't know what the legal process is that is referenced between the first request for a preservation in December 21st, all the way until August, when there is a production on a warrant. The steps that have been taken in between to get the information to put into the warrant are completely unclear. And to the extent that these officers who swore to the contents of affidavits now have no memory of what that is, that's invalidating of those warrants.
Plausible deniability. That's
As
what it is.
for the arrest and the car and the apartment, what I will close by saying on those, because it's not an issue of general warrant or a discussion of particularity, those are more reliant on the issues associated with IGG and Franks.
I'm going to pause it real quick, Yolie, because I have to say, you know, from back in the day when you were just nervous to even do a phone call, and now you're doing your own videos and stuff and have for a long time, I'm just so damn proud of you, Yolie.
Oh, thank you. No,
Just
this
from-
case really got me out here. It was this case, and then I heard CJ had phone calls, and
Yeah.
I called in, and I was just so mad. What I was hearing, I was angry with what I was hearing, and with the media, and with everything. And I thought to myself, "Oh my God, this could happen to anybody."
Yeah. Then you were, you know, you were all scared to even try out, you know, and it's
Oh
like,
my God.
yeah, it
Came
just
on
brings me
panel
back.
and
It brings me back to the beginning, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, and then you put that comment, and I'm like, you're right, man, because you're dropping videos and all sorts of stuff, and it's just from the very beginning, you know, like all the people that have been here from the beginning, and remember when you did the calls there for a while,
And then the IGG, when
Yeah.
I submitted my DNA to 23andMe,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then I was signed up for this research. They were sending me all kinds of questions like, did you play an instrument before the age of 7?
yeah,
They were
yeah.
sending me all these things, and I didn't know that I needed to opt out of those things. And I learned from
yeah,
what's her name, Gabriela Vargas,
yeah,
and I went and I opted out of both the research and the
yeah.
criminal stuff. But yeah,
And
I
you
didn't
just
know
think
that.
it comes with it, you know, you just think it comes with it because that's what's promoted, but no, you actually have to.
Right.
It was kind of a pain for. I remember when you were talking about it, it wasn't just you go to this part and bam, you're done. You had
No.
to look for it. I
I
remember.
followed the directions that she gave. She gave some general directions, and I followed it. And I thought, because I was getting all these crazy emails, like all these research questions, things about my childhood. Like, I'm not answering that. Just
Mhm.
crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just just seeing you make that comment about how you're YouTubing now, and it's like it just brought me back to the beginning. I was like, man,
Well, it has to open
it's
people's
crazy. You see the you know, just your growth with, you know, the media stuff, you know. It's
Yeah.
just so
And
proud, so
the
proud.
IGG was really eye-opening for me and people who are unsuspecting. I mean, I'm an attorney. You would think that I would read the fine print and everything, but unless it's not like alert, your DNA may be used for this purpose and this purpose, unless you opt out. There should be like a big alert, because I mean, I just wanted to figure out if there was a connection because I don't know my dad and see if there's anybody out there. And then they found something, and then I'm like, no, I don't want anything to do with it.
Whenever I heard it being promoted, I always thought it was just an automatic. I didn't think when you said when we found out that you actually had to like click a button, it's like
No,
to me, I was shocked because I was like, well, don't you think it would be the other way around if that's what you're promoting it? You're promoting it to be not available to these databases. You think that if you needed to search and click a checkbox, it would be to undo what they promote, right? That's what I
right.
would you would do the different than what would be promoted. So it was very interesting, yeah. And maybe that's part of it too. Like, hey, just make
And then
them
the
happy.
fact that you can just spit into a tube and put somebody's name on it,
Yeah,
it's kind of scary.
yeah. Joe Blow, the DoorDash driver, trying to deliver a pizza, couldn't find the house.
It's very, very scary.
Mullet flying out the window. Yeah. Yep. It is scary. Scary stuff. I know.
And with that,
So
I'd
long ago.
ask that you find that the warrants that I've just discussed are general warrants, not particular warrants, and they should be suppressed.
Okay, want to respond to that, or do you want to have the defense argue the additional warrant issues and then address them all?
I'll take your lead, but I'm happy to just piecemeal this, and I can address just those. I can make this pretty simple for the court. We don't have to go down the rabbit trail that the defendant would like you to go down. The search warrants regarding the particularity requirement. And this group that we're talking about is Apple, AT&T, there was a first and a second, Koberger's phone, and then Google. All of these warrants were not general warrants. They were all sufficiently particular. They were specific to the type, each one of them listed that they were specific to the type of crime, the location, and all but one of them had temporal limitations. And for the one that didn't, that would be the cell phone warrant. That warrant was more particularized in the types of data that officers were allowed to search for. It's the state's positions, these were not general warrants, and your court can determine that just by looking at the face of the warrant. If you have any questions, otherwise, state submits, you should deny their motions to suppress for these issues.
Your Honor, I was asked to argue the motion regarding the raid on my client's parents' home, search of his person here in Idaho, as well as in Pennsylvania, as well as in the Amazon warrant. I think for the most part, I'll just rely on the briefing. I just want to clear up a couple of things. One of the areas that was covered in the Pennsylvania home raid was that the state had to have a valid warrant in order to enter the home. I think in the briefing it gets a little confusing, but the point was not that Mr. Koberger couldn't have been arrested as he was walking down the street via the usual channels in which that could have occurred. The point was that they had to have a valid warrant in order to get into the home. The only warrant that they have is the one that we're challenging and via the Franks motion. And so that was the purpose of that argument. Issue in terms of choice of law, it sounds like the state's kind of accepting that Idaho Constitution should apply. We set out a few different reasons why that should be the case. It doesn't seem like there's a big argument going on there. So unless the court has questions about it, I'll leave that alone. And then the other issue that I wanted to touch on is the right of privacy in the information that we have in our Amazon goings about. Why should the state have to have a warrant for that? I thought we set it out pretty well in the briefing, but I think, the big concept and takeaway here is in Carpenter and Riley, the United States Supreme Court starts doing something different. And I think what the court is starting to recognize is that to a great extent, the United States has become a sort of panopticon. That is, the concept of the panopticon is you have a prison in which you only need a small number of guards because you have a very heavy-duty surveillance system. In the United States, we have via our phones, via the internet, much of what we do is now surveilled and very easily accessible. And so the fact that we have the third-party doctrine made sense when it was being adopted back in the 70s and the 60s. It stops making sense once all of this information is easily accessible in the way that it is. And so our point is that the judiciary has to have a role in this. There has to be a judge between us and the executive. Otherwise, we're essentially allowing the executive to know everything about us all the time. And so the state makes the point that similar to the one that Professor Kerr made about going and getting bank materials. Once those were things that could be done simply and efficiently via these records, a person didn't have to go out and get the cash. The state argues in this case, because of Amazon, Mr. Koberger didn't have to go someplace to purchase items. All of that would have been out in public. He's doing it on his computer. And so why should that make it private? And the reason why that has to become private, Your Honor, is because of the vast amount of information that is now so easily accessible to the government. If we don't require a warrant, we essentially put all of ourselves at hazard of being snooped on at any time. And so I also just want to just briefly bring up, I think yesterday the court had talked about privacy rights with the IGG databases. And I certainly want to make sure that we are preserving that argument. We included it in the briefing. We do believe that Americans have privacy interest in the genetics they share with other people and that other people then place within these databases. So that is not something that we intended to abandon in any way yesterday. If the court has no other questions for me, I would rely on the briefing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I'd like to address just the third-party doctrine, and then I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Thompson to address the other motions to suppress. And the case that we're talking about is the Amazon records, and that's what has to do with the third-party doctrine. And the U.S. Supreme Court case State v. Miller is the controlling case here. And Idaho courts, as explored in my briefing, apply Miller. And there's no reason for this court to diverge from that Fourth Amendment analysis. The documents are Amazon's business records. They detail transaction history. Business records are most akin to bank records, which is allowed. Applying the court's reasoning from Miller, again, these documents are business records of Amazon. They're not the defendant's private papers. Amazon is a party to those transactions. They have a substantial stake in these records. And the defendant took the risk when he revealed his affairs that this information would be conveyed by Amazon to third parties, including the government. It's the state's position, and it should be the position of this court. The defendant does not have a Fourth Amendment privacy interest in Amazon's business records. Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning, Judge. I'm going to address, I guess, the remaining warrants or the questions raised by the defense about the remaining warrants. I'd like to start first with the warrants for the residents in Pennsylvania. That expands into Mr. Koberger's person under the Pennsylvania search warrants for his person, for his car, which was in Pennsylvania, and then the defense also raises questions about statements made by Mr. Koberger to law enforcement. First, as to 119 Lambston itself, one of the first things the defendant offers to the court is claims that there was no local warrant, valid local warrant, and that simply isn't true.
I'm going to pause it real quick. Pam, you're funny as hell. And Aaliyah brings up a good point, because I always heard this a lot too, that Apple, when it comes to law enforcement, they're one of the things that they're known for and why people choose them is because of their security, even when it comes to law enforcement. So she does bring in a good point, how they got that much information from Apple, when even with law enforcement, they do kind of keep it restricted. I mean, how many times have we heard of investigators talking about how they couldn't get into Stephen Smith, for example, couldn't get into his cell phone?
Yeah.
They had to have somebody from their own team crack it because Apple wasn't doing it. It happens. I mean, so yeah, she brings up a good point. I think there was a lot of misleading and manipulation going on. I really do. And I think it was all from the president of the university. He's the most important man in Moscow. Because without him, there is no Moscow, there is no university, and then potentially there is no Panhandle. Because then I guarantee you, one of these other states, when it comes to the agriculture land out there, I guarantee you, if that university went away, because that was the whole reason why they got to keep the Panhandle, I guarantee you, if they lost that university, I bet you Washington State, Montana, Oregon would be wanting to, hey, it doesn't exist anymore back in 1800 and something. Doesn't exist anymore, so now we have equal right to this land like it states right here. And that agricultural land is golden when it comes to the crops and everything that they can grow up there. All the programs that that's where a lot of the University of Idaho money comes from with the funding, is with all of these different agricultural programs that they do out there when it comes to the crops and the wilderness and everything that they could take advantage of it with. I could see them for sure. So it brings up good point though, Amy. Thank you. And Leah.
The record clearly demonstrates there were 3 valid local warrants, Pennsylvania warrants, for the residence, for the defendant's person, and for his car. The defendant then asserts, and I appreciate Mr. Logston's clarifications, but essentially the defendant asserts there needs to be a separate special warrant in order for Pennsylvania to take the defendant into custody as a fugitive from Idaho on our charges. And as we cited in our briefing on this, the statutes in Pennsylvania and Idaho are virtually the same, and they clearly contemplate that a felony fugitive can be taken into custody without a fugitive warrant. Under the circumstances that exist in this.
Then why did they use a fugitive warrant?
The issue.
Go ahead.
Then why did they use a fugitive warrant? He wasn't a felon yet.
Nope.
He's talking as if Brian Koberger was already a felon in order to be arrested. There were no felony charges against him when the fugitive warrant was issued. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Maybe there's more to it that I don't know, but we'll see.
That's what everybody's been saying the whole time. But we're starting to see now. We're starting to see.
Is the law enforcement presence or access to the defendant inside his
Yes.
parents' residence. We
Misleading.
would submit that's already addressed because Pennsylvania State Police had a valid search warrant for the premises, for the defendant's person, and for his car. So they had lawful process to be where they were, where they found the defendant and took him into custody as a fugitive. The knock and announce, there was discussion earlier today and the explanation of what happened with the dynamics of the knock and announce. That's detailed in Sergeant Lang's statement, which is now has a current cover affidavit to it filed with the court.
Now
That's
has a
S5.
current cover affidavit to it. Is that the letter that was recently sent to Payne
Yeah.
about changing the warrant to a hasty knock warrant?
Yep. You know it is. That's why they hurried up and did it. And what side has a Brady Giglio that had to be announced?
Yeah, the prosecution, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. These people, man.
I'm not going to publicly go through all the factors unless the court wishes me to,
Not
because they are quite incriminating as far as the applicable factors that would justify either an abbreviated knock and announce or, frankly, elimination of knock and announce entirely. And from what we have before the court now, it's clear that Pennsylvania's police were operating in a dynamic sense, reacting to real-time information that was coming in. That's all documented in various reports and log sheets that have been submitted with our pleadings, which are not particularly lengthy in nature. Finally, as to
which are not particularly lengthy in
I think the
nature.
key notion here,
Which he says all of the notes and logs and everything, which are not particularly lengthy. Right.
All I can do is laugh.
I just
it's like,
dude, he was jogging around the house.
It's like somebody trying to sell you beachfront property in the desert. It really is. He talks real good.
But seriously, how frightening that was for his family.
Bro, this ain't 1800 no more.
God.
You can't go around selling water as Jesus juice, you know? You can't do it. This pill will make you grow. The hell it will. Oh, man. Wagon to wagon. Oh, selling that Jesus juice water. It's not 1800 anymore, BT.
On any statements the defendant made, and frankly, he really didn't make much in the way of incriminating statements, is there was never any interrogation. He was Mirandized eventually, but even the prior conversations that occurred with Pennsylvania law enforcement, there was never interrogation. And so Miranda is not implicated, and so there's no issue on the statements themselves. As to his car and his person, as I've already mentioned, there were valid specific Pennsylvania search warrants for each of those. So those are presumed to be lawful. There's been no substantive attack on those. There is a motion to suppress regarding, and I'll use the air quotes, arrest warrant. And frankly, I have yet to be able to figure out what arrest warrant is being referred to. But again, all the actions in Pennsylvania were taken pursuant to valid warrants, search warrants from the Pennsylvania courts.
He doesn't know what arrest warrant. Rewind that. He doesn't know what arrest warrants are being referred to. Well, there's only one in Pennsylvania. I mean, come on. This really irritates me.
Gaslighting like a mother. Like, seriously. That's what they get away with. That's what they get away with in Moscow, though. That's what they've gotten away with. They haven't had to take this shit to Boise.
Why is he
They
saying he doesn't know what arrest warrant? There's only one.
they kept it in house so they could literally. What it is it's like it's like a telemarketer. Like a telemarketer has all of the rebuttals in a cubicle going around all around them, so that way if they get a response they can directly go to that particular paragraph and read off of it to have the quickness and the words and the big words and the attention. Here, hurry up, let me take this attention away from what you're trying to tell me. Let me tell you. And that's what it is right here. But he's using old scripts. He's using Moscow scripts. And yes, they probably would work still in Moscow. But when it comes to the big boys in Boise, it's just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Because what is he saying right here is any kind of argument. Really, if we're listening to it, what kind of argument is this? Now, did Ashley, yeah, she addressed some things, but when it comes to Bill, what is he even doing up there? What is he even doing up there, Yolie? I don't understand it.
I don't know, but you'll see the judge says something that makes me wonder, and I don't know why, but it just makes me wonder.
It's just a bunch of rambling from this guy.
Well,
Motion to suppress regarding.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And I'll use the air quotes, arrest warrant. And frankly, I have yet to be able to figure out what arrest warrant is being referred to. But again, all the actions in Pennsylvania were taken pursuant to valid warrants, search warrants from the Pennsylvania courts and the applicable fugitive arrest statutes. And so we don't see that there's any issue before the court there. The defense also raised the issue of a search warrant for the defendant's person in a separate motion, which appears to be the search warrant for the defendant's person here in Idaho when he was returned to Idaho. And as the search warrant and the affidavit for the search warrant show, which were attached to our reply, there was a valid search warrant for that. I think any issues to be argued beyond that relate to the IGG and Franks that are already pending with the court. As far as the defendant's, the search of the defendant's apartment in Washington, for whatever reason, the defendant did not include all the documentation with their particular motion to suppress, but we provided that in our response, that there was the Washington search warrant. There was also an amendment to the Washington search warrant. The Washington search warrants, the applications, included all the information, the Exhibit A information from the state, and then the WSU Police Department added their additional state of Washington specific information. There's nothing to question the validity of that warrant on its face. So, Your Honor, unless the court has questions, I don't have anything further to offer in the way of argument, oral argument. Thank you.
I don't think he offered an argument anyway. He was nodding off. He was like, what is this mumbo jumbo?
Just rely again on the.
Oh, no, pay him. Look away, pay him.
The knock and announce. I think.
Look away, Pam.
The totality of the circumstances of this particular raid or something that the court has to be cognizant of. If Dylan Roof could essentially be picked up in a parking lot outside of a drugstore, or whatever it is that they were
Telling me facts about which I have no idea, and so it's not going to be helpful to compare it to whoever Mr. Roof is. So
I guess the point is that in this particular case, the state manufactured the exigencies, if they had them at all. The reality is, as they explained in their own affidavit, they're essentially watching Mr. Koberger as he moves around his house via snipers. I mean, they were quite safe, and there was simply no reason to bash the doors in momentarily after yelling from their Bearcat.
there's two issues. There's officer safety. There's also destruction of evidence concerns.
Okay, stop that right there.
In the cases that we cited, Judge, when
Okay.
Go ahead.
He said officer safety and destroying of evidence concerns. Okay. Officer safety, well, they could have arrested him when he was out jogging.
Mm-hmm.
Second is the destruction of evidence. Okay, this is a month and a half after the crime. Don't you think he would have destroyed evidence already? You don't think you think he'd drive all this way to Pennsylvania with evidence in his car? And if he did have evidence in his car, don't you think he would have fled when the police stopped him in Indiana 2 times?
Mm-hmm.
Come on. But
Mhm.
the judge is playing devil's advocate right now. I know that. But still, that's what I would have responded with when the
Well,
judge said,
he has to, because he has to trust that the people that are on the prosecution side are bringing factual information to
yeah.
the court.
Yeah. So what I would have argued is exactly what I said. Officer safety, well, let's talk about that, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. He was
And no-
jogging around the house. No. Instead, they had guns to him or snipers while he's walking around the house, probably
That's so
having
scary too.
having an anxiety attack about the trash and making sure that this trash goes there and that trash goes there because he has OCD and he's like, I mean,
Oh, if they were watching him in the house with the sniper scope, they were watching him with the sniper scope, freaking taking out the garbage. Can you imagine if somebody accidentally it only takes a little.
yeah. And this guy is known to be cleaning, his neighbor said in Washington,
Scary.
vacuuming in the middle of the night.
2 a.m.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when he should be sleeping. I
Yeah.
mean, he's probably a clean freak, but we don't know that for sure. But anyway.
Well, listen, I vacuum every day. I don't know. It's just something I do. But I don't do it at 2 in the morning when I'm living in an apartment complex. I don't do it at 2 in the morning, period. So maybe he is.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, when you're living in an apartment building, you got to be an asshole of a neighbor to vacuum at 2 in the frickin' morning. You got to be an asshole of a neighbor. Let's be real.
That's true. Yeah. And she had a little baby. That's why she was concerned, because she had a newborn baby and the neighbor thought the vacuum was going to wake up the newborn baby.
Yeah, that's
how she remembered that he was vacuuming at those hours. And then you have that crazy aunt of his that is saying that he didn't want to eat on pans that had meat and he would make her buy new pans before he ate there. And I don't know if that's true, but it may not be true. But just
I don't know. I mean, I don't like Chinese food, and there's particular reasons, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to eat something off the same pan that was washed after it made Chinese food.
Yeah, so the judge is playing devil's advocate here, I guess, but we'll see.
Yeah. He is.
And the claim has been that there's evidence being destroyed. The evidence, what's known to the officers, is something along the lines of, they hear somebody running away after they announce themselves. It's not typical that the police simply don't knock and announce at all. In those cases, they usually give the person the opportunity to surrender, but it's not a particularly long one. And in this case, they don't do that at all. And the only thing they knew is that he's walking around from room to room and that he has some kitchen gloves on. And I don't think that equates necessarily to the destruction of,
Yeah, the plastic gloves.
Yeah,
the plastic gloves. When everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, they found surgical gloves."
Kitchen gloves, which are going to be put back underneath the sink after he uses them.
Oh no. This is the perfect pause right here for the judge. He's just like, what the hell did I get myself into? What am I doing?
That's not all they knew, but I won't go into the detail in order
to
preserve.
What?
Oh, sorry. Right there, the judge says, that's not all he was doing, but I won't go into the details.
Right.
What does he mean by that?
Who knows? The misleading that Anne's talking about. Listen, he's got right. The judge has got to trust that the prosecution's coming with truth and facts.
That's not all he was doing.
Yeah, so he's got to trust that. You know, fine
Well, what
wine
else was he
takes
doing,
time.
Judge?
You know, it'll come time when that wine is like, yep, it's ready to go.
Boy, I would not be as calm as Jay Loxton. I don't think I would be like on fire.
It's better than he's better than Steve G's lawyer.
Oh,
What's his name?
Shannon Gray.
Yeah, that dude's a loose cannon, man. and he shows up to interviews looking like he just woke up with a hangover.
Yep.
He does. It's
Mhm.
horrible. Uncombed hair. 10 o'clock shadow, not even a 5 o'clock, a 10 o'clock. All clammy. Looking like he just woke up from a night of drinking. What's up,
So we
Cherry?
don't go into those issues.
Thank you, Judge.
What's up, Joel?
But beyond that, we'll rely on the briefing. Thank you.
So that was what gave me some pauses. He
Um,
said that's not all he was doing.
Yeah.
The judge said that. And I'm curious as to, well, what else was he doing?
Maybe what they talked about before.
Which was what?
Some of that sealed stuff. Because he keeps referring to the sealed hearing quite often
Yeah.
in these ones. So he's probably still stuck on what they just talked about. No, if you're on TV, it doesn't. I don't think it does. It show the comments on TV. I don't know. I think it does, but you have to be signed in, maybe, and then I think they scroll on the right. I'm not sure though.
Okay. I'll take the motions to suppress under advisement and issue ruling forthwith. The next issue is the state's motion to compel regarding the defendant's expert disclosures.
We don't have to listen to this part.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
If we don't have to listen to this part, I have to get off and finish my taxes.
Oh, okay.
This is
Yeah,
this is just about the motion to compel, and I can explain it briefly.
Yeah.
So they provided these disclosures. You know, you're supposed to exchange information on your experts, and the defense is saying they didn't provide any reports, they didn't provide anything, no DNA reports, there's nothing here. And the prosecution is saying we complied and we can supplement, and the judge is essentially just going to say, hey, you guys need to work it out. Okay, that's what you do. I mean, you meet and confer. So a lot of people just get the expert disclosures, they put a CV, they just generally state what they're going to say because they need to get it out. And then it's up to the opposing party will send a letter and say, hey, you're missing this and this and this, and you meet and confer. And then if you have to supplement, you supplement, and back and forth. And so, but I think Ann Taylor wanted to make a point that, look, there is nothing here. And the judge did counsel both parties that, there should be a mini course on DNA in the disclosures at some point. And so at any point, each party could bring a motion in limine to exclude experts because they didn't comply with the rule, of disclosures. So it can be handled that way. So he doesn't really make a ruling. He just says, work it out.
Yeah. When do you think that redacted the part of that closed hearing is going to come out?
I don't know, because the court reporter has to finalize the transcript, and then once she finalizes it, they have 2 weeks to review it and redact what they want redacted. And I have a feeling they might not agree, and then there'll have to be a hearing about that.
Yeah, I have a feeling too, because like I said, if it's up to the prosecution, it'd be every word but the on the pages, so that's, so it could be more than 2 weeks, huh? It could be a lot longer than, yeah. Does the judge have the final say on that, or is just they have to come up with an agreement themselves for that too?
Well, he wants him
They
to
have to
come,
battle it out.
yeah, he can, I mean, he wants him to come to an agreement. That's the easiest way, but if there's a fight about it, he's going to have to decide.
Well, you already know they're not going to agree, so
We'll see.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Well, thank you for hopping up. Appreciate it. Like I said, we'll be back on Monday. We'll be doing more. I'll be having some other shows in the next few days as well.
We'll
Just
take
want to
care of
say
your sinuses.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Just prayers I wake up tomorrow and I don't have a cloudy head from sinuses, because last couple of days that's what I've been waking up to. But thank you all. Appreciate it. I'll be back here tonight either on this channel or at the lounge, and still be hanging out. So if you want to come over and hang out, appreciate it, and have a good night, everybody.
Okay,
Thank you,
good night,
Yolie.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
You guys are okay over there? Is your victim at the hospital? Someone shot there. Alright, do you need us to take pictures of the, is it domestic related? She's calling back. We're going to try to give her a call again, and then she just added another phone number to the 13-year-old grandson, who's possibly with the daughter. How was this?
Pretty close.
Veteran Chris Conway's calling back, so they have a female veteran communication. She's the worst thing. Detective 12, take the check coming out. Also still staying stop. No. Avenger custody. Position where we. Anyone else close by just for us, let me know.
Let supervisor know that I have a for attack.
First stop off.